Right, we are back with part two. So this was David's idea this season, this little series about career changes. And I really jumped on board, David, because I think it's so important for people at the moment when people are re-looking at every aspect of their life and what they want to be doing. But before we dive into that, how are you doing? Because you've had quite a few changes over in Australia this year, haven't you? This week.
Yeah. So yesterday was the first day of no, actually, before I tell you that, so basically they said they're going to remove that, and also you can go and eat at restaurants and things. But what really strange thing happened was the health minister said yes, all this is gone. But then the premier, literally half an hour later, I heard said no, it's not. So it caused a huge amount of confusion, and I think enough people heard the first message. So there's still, most people aren't wearing them, but there still are some people wearing them, as you'd expect, considering we've
Yeah.
just had four months of just non-stop wearing them. So, but overall it's good. I think that the collective is really feeling good about the situation. I even saw this woman today at the supermarket who I always see, and she wears gloves when she goes to the supermarket. I assume because she's worried about getting something from the equipment, the trolley and stuff. But she wasn't even wearing a muzzle,
Right.
so but she was still wearing her gloves. But
I know. It's interesting, isn't it? We've had
yeah,
obviously no mandates for ages here. I mean, I've got no idea really when the dates were. You know, people are very good at quoting dates. I haven't got a clue because obviously, like you, I've ignored the whole thing. But
yeah.
even though months down the line when ours have been dropped, there's still quite a lot of people wearing them. But I find it's really variable. You know, I can go shopping one day and see virtually no one. And then you'll go the next day and you'll see loads of people. So it's really, really odd. So obviously are still a lot of people that are now completely indoctrinated into that. And I do think this fits into our career change talk as well, David, because it can be so difficult when the Stockholm syndrome type thing, when you've got put yourself in your own limiting boundaries. It can be
Mm.
really, really hard from a human perspective to sort of drop all those restrictions and just throw them away for some people because they're so indoctrinated into it. And off camera before, we were just talking about a lot of the subliminal messages we're getting from every source. So it's an interesting scenario, isn't it?
Oh yeah, absolutely. The biggest thing that stopped me from changing careers was the fear factor,
Yeah.
and and the limitations, either self-inflicted or societally inflicted, which became mine anyway, didn't they? So uh, yeah, it's a very good point.
So with this, I think, this is the thing, because we talk about, we look at, everyone's got their own different things that they take on that they might not be aware of. So what you were saying now, and we touched on it a bit in our last talk about the fear factor and how much society does impact us. And I think anyone
Mm.
who's watching this channel, they're the ones that have sort of been pushing through that over the last couple of years. But we've all got our thing that's just a little bit too scary for us to push through. So talk us through sort of going right back to the start for you in terms of, I know we covered it a bit, but I want to find out a bit more about when you found yourself in it. Was it the accountancy um, career?
Yeah,
Talk
yeah,
us through how you got to that stage of actually saying, sod it, I'm making this jump.
yeah, sure. So I think when you leave school, you just want to. I think most kids have an idea about what they want to do. Like you mentioned, you wanted to go work with the elephants and do other things other than the thing you ended up doing. I
Mm.
think we always have that thing. Like it's a dream as a kid, but we're always just taught that it's a pipe dream. So when I left school, I was, listening to some of my favorite bands were wearing certain types of clothes, and my parents were like, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I just want to work a job where I can just wear what I want." And they were like, "Well, that's, good luck doing that." So I thought I was interested in computer programming, so I ended up doing a mini, it was a diploma at like a, not a university, but a tertiary education, institution. And I used that after I realized that I didn't really like that. I used that to get into university because I didn't get high enough grades to get into the university that I wanted to get into initially. I got into a different one. But after that point, I was like, okay, well, I don't know what I should do. A commerce degree is a pretty broad degree that you can choose,
Mm,
loads of different majors. So that's what I went with, and I only picked accountancy just based out of job security. I
yeah,
guess it was just like, okay, every business needs an accountant, and I think that it doesn't matter what the economy is doing, they're going to need an accountant. So I was like, okay, I'll do that. And even though I knew I didn't like studying it, I didn't like studying at school, and I didn't like studying it during university either. But I just kept doing it. That would have been a really good point to just, okay, let me just pivot here and try something new. You know, maybe not quit the degree, but try a different major within that degree, perhaps. But I didn't. So it was really stupid, in retrospect. And because I did quite well in my tax unit in my final semester, I ended up going into tax, and I ended up working at a place where my grandparents used to live, like on the same street, just not far from my parents' house. And uh, after, like, I don't know, a few months, I started to kind of get a good handle on things, and I started producing some good work. Like, it was a bit rocky at first, but then my work just started taking a nosedive. And then after about 7 months or so, 6 months, and I didn't know why. And I just, in typical David Cowan fashion at the time, I just kept doing the work, and not really, and just being depressed about it and stuff. And it wasn't until maybe 15 months after I started the job that I thought, I had a chat with my boss, and he was like, maybe you should try commerce, get into a commercial business, because that's so different. So I tried that, and I did like it a lot more. I ended up working for a car dealership, and I was surrounded by Porsches and Bentleys and other cars. So it was really quite a nice surrounding, and it wasn't accounting like the whole thing. So that was good for a while. And then I moved to a different dealership, and after a while, that got boring. Like most jobs do. They get boring after a while. And I was at crossroads at, like, 3 years after I started this job, and I was like, what am I going to do now? Should I, go back to university? Should I move companies? Um, as I said in the last video, though, I thought those were my only two options. So, and I was studying, my CPA at the time,
mm,
my accounting accreditation, and I think I passed one in 2 years. I passed one unit. Like, I really wasn't enjoying that either. So I took the semester off to kind of rest and just kind of collect myself. But what I ended up doing was just watching stupid TV shows, like Jersey Shore and just other mindless TV, just the usual thing. So, uh, but after that, I ended up going overseas. Like, I visited Europe for the first time, and I had friends that moved to London in the mid year, and one of them was my really good friend, and another people I was friends with also moved at the same time, and I came back a year later to go back to London, and at that point they'd been there for a year, and I was like, these guys are having a really good time. Maybe I should give that a shot. So,
yeah.
uh, but I had to finish my CPA first, because that was going to be the thing. That was my ticket to get over there. So even though I hadn't passed many units, I was like, okay, I'm going to go now. That gave me kind of like a new lease on life in some ways, or a goal to hit. So
Your why, didn't it?
it
Your
became a why.
purpose.
Yeah, it
Yeah.
became a reason to actually finish it, because I wasn't even really, I wasn't really enjoying it. So, but I studied really hard, and I made sure that I did it. And in the final semester, I had 2 units to go, and I really wanted to go like mid-year 2013. So I ended up taking the semester, quitting my job early, and studying 2 units at once so I could finish it and just go. And June 10th, because I wasn't working, I was saving money. Obviously, I wasn't working much, and well, at all. So I was cycling to the gym. So I would cycle to the gym, and one morning I seemed to be going a lot faster than I usually went. I don't know why. I was just going really fast, like down the street. And at some point, I could see this car coming towards me, and he was going to turn right. And at some point, I realized that he hadn't seen me. And instead of, like, I had so much time to slow down or to think about which, veer left or right, which way I was going to go. But instead of slowing down, I found myself just speeding up, and I ended up cycling right in front of this guy. I mean, I could have just gone right, like, there was so much space for me to do this. I actually went in, and I got hit. Obviously, I got hit by this car, flew off my bike. The bike was a write-off, and I was luckily fine. Like, I had no injuries really, apart from, like, a couple of bruised ribs, and my hip was my hip bone was a bit bruised as well. But I didn't break anything. My neck was fine. Back was fine. Looking back, I really feel like that was a massive wake up call. It was like, what are you doing with your life? You hear a lot about people who say that, oh, I could get hit by a bus tomorrow, and what's my life going to come to? Like I did get hit by a car, and I was fine. So I didn't change anything, because I was planning to go to London and try something new. So I ended up finishing the units. I actually failed one, I had to redo it. So I ended up going a bit later than I expected. But when I was in London, I wasn't studying so much anymore. I'd finished that. So I was able to really clear my mind. And even though I didn't really like working as an accountant, I was kind of forced to work as an accountant over there. I ended up working for The Economist for my first job. And the people that I met, they were like 45. I was 30 at the time. So they're a bit older than me. And they were lifeless. I'd met these people and I shook their hands, and they were just like shaking hands with a dead fish. And I kind of thought, like, if I don't change anything, that's going to be me in 15 years. That's what my life is going to be like. I'm going to be this depressed 45-year-old person who's just completely has lost his soul, you know what I mean, to a job. And it wasn't until about a year later that I met a guy who introduced me to life coaching. And I went to this weekend event where we kind of found out more about that. And I made a decision at that event to, when I get home, to move my life in that direction, even though I hadn't had this big awakening thing that I might have mentioned in the last video. But I was like, yeah, that's what I'll do. I don't know. It was just like, it was another thing that I hadn't really heard of before. I was like, okay, that sounds interesting. So at the end of that time in London, I had that big awakening experience where I woke up just feeling full of energy and confidence and certainty. I was like, okay, I'm really going to do it this time. So I got home, and almost as soon as I got back, I started studying this life coaching course, and I ended up working at the same company that I worked with, before I left, and not as an accountant though. I was like, I don't want to be an accountant, so I did still an admin role, but it was, it was a job that I could do with my eyes closed, and then it got really boring after like 2 or 3 months. So I ended up working in a bar for a little bit, and then I went back to accounting, and then I was still doing this course, and ended up moving to Melbourne, about 15 months after I got back, and to start this life and start a life coaching business, and that was my first kind of foray into business. And I didn't really, I developed an interest in business, even though I'd been working in many businesses, over the last 7 or 8 years. I actually worked for the NHS, by the way, and that was the worst job. It was the worst job I've ever had.
Yeah, I will go. I'll with that. Yeah.
And it's just like, you're sitting there, and I'd look out the window, I'd be looking at a brick wall, it was just so boring. It was so boring. And even the guy I was working with, who was a bit younger than me, he was my best friend at the job. He was like, yeah, this place is going to suck the life out of you. And he was right. And there was one girl in there who was from New Zealand, and she loved her job, like, which is great. If you love your job, that's great, more power to you. But I just couldn't do it. It just wasn't for me. And there were so many times throughout that time as an accountant.
There though, can I just stop there? Because I think you just said something really important. Is you can't compare your experience and what you're feeling to someone else. So you're both in a similar environment, and the girl absolutely loved it, and for her, she was on purpose, and so that's brilliant. Because we are all designed to do different things. And do you think half of why we take so long is because we think we're going to want what someone else wants, but it's not actually what we want?
Yeah, I think that we don't know what we want partly because, well, I think deep down we do know what we want, really, but we don't know what we want because of the fact that we're told what to want.
Yes.
We're told that we should pursue or strive for X, Y, Z. And I had a company car. I was making okay money. It wasn't that great. It was okay money at the time, but I also found that my salary wasn't increasing because I didn't like the job.
Yeah.
So I would be same money every year almost. Um, but no, that's a really good point. It's true. You know, you can't compare anyone's experience to anybody else's, because the exact same work environment, the exact same job almost, and someone loves it and someone doesn't. And, you know, it's just, it is what it is, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had that all through my schooling career. I absolutely loved a lot of it. My twin sister absolutely hated a lot of it because we're completely different people. So what's right for me as a person is going to be completely wrong for her, and vice versa. So,
Yeah.
I think that is things. Other people can talk really passionately about something that's really right for them, and you think, oh, that sounds good, I'll give that a go. But if it's not you,
Mm.
if you're trying to be someone you're not, it's going to come back to bite you at some stage.
Yeah, 100%. And that's like, that's the same with, well, it's with everything. But I mean, even in the next part of the story, uh, it's the same with pursuing something outside the box, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because people will be like, oh, this is really working well for me. And so you go and try that, but you know, maybe it doesn't work for you. Maybe it does, but you know, but yeah, so I started this life coaching business, and at some point, not too long after I started the business, I hit like a massive wall.
Mm.
I woke up just feeling really unconfident and uncertain about the future, and I think that was actually also part of a spiritual awakening process. It might have also been burnout from this. I was working with another company that was having me really, I was working crazy hours, you know, Catherine. I got really burnt out. Like I was just working 14-hour days, and just literally waking up 5 a.m., go to the gym, come back, work, and then go to bed at like 10, you know, and just
Mm.
repeating that process. So I did burn myself out. Um, and then at some point, I realized I was going to run out of money because I had moved to Melbourne with quite a lot of savings. And my plan was to just, first business, I'm just going to succeed, you know, like that's just what's going to happen. You know, like I was like too naive to really know enough about how business really works, you know what I mean? And how the world really works at that point. So I ended up working in a bank, which is also the second worst job I think I've ever had. And and because I was at a time where I was in that lull of losing my sense of self, you know, which I think a lot of people do as they go through a spiritual awakening, because you're literally killing the old you, aren't you? Like
Yes.
you become reborn as a result. But I was working in the bank, and oh, it was so bad, wearing a uniform and just having to act all proper all the time. And I got in trouble for being too cheeky to some of the customers and stuff like that, and saying the wrong things. But my boss pulled me into his office one day, and he said, how you think you're going? Like, how you finding it? I said, oh yeah, it's okay. You know, it's all right. And he's like, you don't look like you're enjoying yourself that much. And I said, okay, maybe I'm not really enjoying myself. And he goes, what do you want to do? What do you want to do for work? And I said, I don't know. I wanted to be a musician. That was my real answer, but I just didn't want him to say, well, you know, pick something more realistic, you know. So I just said, I don't know. And then, and he was, well, what do you like to do for fun? And I looked at him blankly and I said, I don't know. And at that point, I was like, you don't even know who you are anymore. You know, like you're, you're completely lost. And that really concerned me, obviously. And I looked on YouTube for someone who's experienced something similar, and I come across this girl. Can't remember who she was, but she described what I was experiencing, and it was the only video I could find. And but hers seemed like a lot worse than mine, which I felt like kind of good about because her experience was worse. But I was still in trouble, and
How enlightening though for that boss to actually say that to you and have that conversations. Because how many, that was sounds like it did you a real favor by having that conversation with you.
yeah, yeah, it did. Everything happens for a reason, doesn't it?
Mm.
So, but the funny thing was when I was at the bank, all these people would come in, and not all these people. It happened more maybe like 3 or 4 times. But someone would say, "Oh, you should do voiceover work. You've got a good voice for voiceovers." And so many people said that. And it was really, really quite funny. And at that, I was at that point, I was aware of the universe, and I was like, uh, "That's a nudge of some sort." Even one of the people actually said, "This is a nudge," and I was like, "Okay." But voiceover wasn't really my passion. You know, it wasn't really what I wanted to do. You know, so after a little bit, I decided, well, after I had that conversation, I was like, you need to give yourself. I had this innate knowing that I just had to give myself the thing I knew I loved, which was
Mm,
music, because I hadn't been doing any of it. So I started taking singing lessons, and I started, drumming every day, and that kind of, I started to become a little bit better, and then things got better, and I started feeling more myself again. Um, but I was still working at the bank though. But then after a while, that I had a chat with my boss, and I was like, I'm gonna leave eventually. I just got to find another job, and I wasn't really getting along with my housemates anymore, or ever really. But
mm,
they ended up kicking me out, and I was kind of expecting it too. So they kicked me out, and then after like 2 weeks later or something, or that week, my boss said, "You have to go now," and like, because you're not doing, you're not. We know you're going anyway, but you kind of have to go. I can't keep you on anymore. I was like, okay, fair
yeah,
enough. Like, the only reason he kept me on is because he liked me. So,
yeah,
uh, and I understood that. You're just running a business. You can't have this person just not doing, being depressed and stuff at work, and not doing a good job necessarily. So it was really tough. I was living in you know in an expensive city, working part time, having no money. I had no money at that point. I was in debt. All my money went to living expenses. I was literally spending $50 a week on food,
mm,
and I had no money for anything else really. And so then I lost my job. I got kicked out of my house, and I was like, "Fuck! Like, it can't get any worse than this,"
yeah.
Um, so I
God.
ended up living with a friend. That was quite a smooth transition, and automatically that lifted my mood. You know, uh, and then when I lost my job, I didn't have anything to go to except I was working at a retail store like one day a week or half a day a week, um, in men's clothing. I had an interest in fashion, and I wanted to kind of work, you know, around suits and things like that, and help people dress and things. Uh, so luckily, I ended up getting more shifts at that place, and that was always just a transitionary job. That was never going to be my thing. That was just work here till you figure out what you want to do really.
Mm,
Uh, and after I lost the job, I ended up doing a sales course because I was like, I was still interested in business, but I wasn't doing the business anymore. I'd failed it already because I wasn't making any sales. So I was like, you need to learn some business skills. So I was like, okay, I'll learn sales. Like selling, high ticket sales, like high end coaching and things like that. Coaching programs. So I did that. I ended up working for the company that ran the course pretty much soon after the course had finished, which was really cool. Not in sales, but on their support team. And I just needed some money coming in because I really wasn't doing it. I had a good amount of money going out to rent and all living expenses, but I had no money coming in. So, and at that point, all the the shifts at the retail store had kind of dried up as well, because they were kind of closing down a lot of stores, and the manager didn't like me because she came into work one day when I was I was using the store I was working in was so quiet that I could do anything I wanted. So I was using that time to do things I shouldn't be doing, in terms like with music and stuff. And she caught me one day, so she stopped giving me shifts. And so after, I started working for this internet company that's based on in Canada. And I tried sales for a bit, but it wasn't really my thing. I kind of like the idea of selling, but with sales, and this is a big lesson that I learned, was like we always have such a negative association with sales. Like, you hear the word salesperson or salesman, and what's your automatic reaction? It's like they're going to be slimy, pushy, and sleazy and stuff like that. So um, after not really getting into sales, I did it for a little bit, worked with a few different companies in Australia and overseas. I got to the end of 2019, and I was really excited about 2019. Sorry, end of 2018. I was really excited about 2019 because 2017 was by far the worst year I've ever had, and
mm,
then 2019 was an improvement. So 2018 was an improvement, but I was really excited about 2019. But I was like not really that excited anymore. When it kind of came to the start of the year, or the day before actually. So I had a chat with a friend of mine, and she said, you have to do music. You always talk about it. Like, why aren't you doing it? And I was like, oh, I have all these different excuses and these different reasons why I can't do it. And so she said, let's devise a plan to help you do it. So part of that plan was moving back home, back to Perth, and paying off all the debt and stuff. And so I did that and executed that plan. And I started still working with the same company. And at near the end of 2019, the same company ended up putting on a different course for copywriting, which is the skill that I use now to make money. And I did that course and ended up working with the company with the same company doing their Instagram captions and things like that. And then I worked for a few different clients and stuff, like, around the world. And that's what I'm doing now. That I've been doing that for 2 and a bit years. But once I found that thing that I really enjoyed, I was able to really just kind of double down on it, and really just invest a lot of my time and effort and energy into that to get good. And now, fast forward 2 and a bit years from when I started, like now I'm working kind of like part-time hours and making more money than I've ever made before. And I have more free time, obviously, because of that reason. And yeah, I couldn't be happier. It's like, it's really a dream come true. Like, I haven't hit my dream life yet, but I'm working towards it. I can see it's going to happen at some point if I just keep going the way I'm going and make a few changes here and there. So yeah, I think that's really kind of sums it up. But I mean, there are so many lessons along the way.
Yeah, let's go through some of those because I've got loads of questions about that. So, okay, looking back to where you are now and sort of what you learned. So you're now in a position where you're doing a job you quite like and
Yeah.
feel you'll contribute quite a lot. You're only working part-time and earning more money. So that's which is allowing you a lot of free time to do your music and other stuff.
Yeah.
If you're looking back now and sort of saying to someone who's been in a similar position where they've been sort of going from one thing to another and not finding something that's serving them, what would be some of your key tips to them to fast track that process for them, or if someone's looking to move now?
The biggest one, I think, is the self-knowledge aspect. School doesn't teach you to learn about yourself, and that's the biggest problem that most people have, because when they get out of school, they have all these options, but they don't know enough about themselves to remove a lot of the options. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
the biggest lesson that I've learned over the last few years, and I obviously started learning more about myself after 30, and that is trying as many things as possible in the shortest amount of time possible. And then when you find that thing, just go all in on it and find the best person you can find to teach you that thing. And if you can, get a coach, because they'll be able to, I've had a few different coaches for what I'm doing now. And the most current person I'm working with, who's actually part of the company as well. So I'm not actually paying this person to coach me. He's just doing it out of the goodness of his, of himself, really. Yeah. So super grateful for him, because I wouldn't be anywhere, where I am without him. And the person who also runs the business is the CEO, who's given me the opportunity. So yeah, having a coach really does fast track your success. I mean, you have to put in the work, of course, but it really does make a huge difference. So, Mum would be like, you're spending so much time. Like, it took a while, Catherine, to really also break down a whole pile of old beliefs that I had, and really rethink, rewire my brain to think differently, because otherwise I was just going to get the same results, wasn't I, that I always had. So yeah, to anybody who doesn't know what to do, try a bunch of different things that you think you'll enjoy, and then you'll eventually find something that you like. Like, you can forget about all the stuff you're not going to like, because Mum wanted me to become a financial planner, and at that point I had enough self-knowledge to just say no. I'm not even going to entertain that, because it's going to be a waste of time and money, and I know I'm not going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
So that'd be the biggest one,
isn't it? To do something. I was speaking to a couple of lovely people this week, and a couple of them are sort of trapped. I'm putting it in inverted commas, because they're going away to think about whether they're really trapped or not. Some people genuinely are.
right.
in jobs that they don't like. And you can see when they're talking about that, how their energy just falls. And then when they're talking about something they're really passionate about, they just light up the world. But equally, you know, having a conversation, say for some people at the stage of life they're at, if they're earning good money doing something that then is an enabler for them to have the time and the money and the resources to do what they're passionate about, that can work really well for people as well at certain points of their life. But you've got to be honest with yourself, haven't you, David? I mean, did you find that, you know, having that confidence to say, you know, actually be honest with yourself and say, I cannot invest anymore in this because it's just not me?
Yeah. Oh, that was the hardest thing was just every year just starting the same and doing the same thing again, and getting to the end of every year and thinking it's going to be different, but then not changing any actions and just, you know, it is tough because a lot of people's identity unfortunately is wrapped up in their occupation, isn't it?
Yeah.
So when I don't think it's any surprise that I lost my identity when I kind of moved away from accounting, for one, but I'm sure there were a few reasons, you know, it wasn't just that. But yeah, I mean, that is a huge thing.
So do you think it's like, when I'm listening to you, one of the things that stands out to me that I might be right or wrong about is so much in life as humans. I mean, we're seeing it a lot at the moment. So take the whole Jasara and Nasara stuff. There's a lot of people that have had this sort of thing put on a plate, and you know, that is obviously really, really appealing if it happens. And so it's like, when this happens, I'll be happy. But do you think one of the things you've learned is the fact that you've got to be happy? When you're happy, the right things will come into your life. I mean, no job can complete you, can it? You've got to find yourself independently of your job.
Right, and it's the same to be said about finding a partner. You know, like, you need to be happy first, you know, and there's no person is going to complete you, are they? So I think it's funny that whole term, and we're going in a different direction now, but that we'll go back to the, you know, the whole term of the other half. It just seems stupid to me. Like, you want another whole, you don't want another half, you want another whole.
Exactly.
You know? But yeah, it does take a lot of courage to kind of just say, no, enough's enough, you know, and I guess people get too comfortable being comfortable, don't they? And it's easier to go to your job and just get the paycheck every month or whatever it is and do the same thing. But when you realize that if you don't change, then nothing will change, and can you really see yourself doing this for another 20 years or 30 years or whatever? Like in my case, I said to my friend who moved to London, I was like, there's no way I'm going to be doing this when I'm 40. Like, I cannot be doing this when I'm 40. And this was before I even met those other people, you know, that I told you about. Luckily, I'm not 40 yet, and I'm not, so I'm not going to be doing it when I'm 40. But, you know, it does take a lot of courage to even just to move jobs sometimes. But yeah, to be able to, and it wasn't easy. And I don't want anybody to think it was easy. I've been through a lot of shit, you know, in my life, and had been depressed for the most of my life, you know, until more recent years. And when I thought I got out of my depression, and then when I came back from London, and then I had the spiritual awakening, I went back into depression. I was like, oh no, like, how long is this going to last for? But the other side of that was just so magical, you know. The other side of that dark night of the soul was really a blessing, you know.
Yeah, I think that's so key, isn't it? That if you don't make space in your life for something new, I mean, everyone knows the Einstein quote, supposedly by Einstein, that the definition of insanity is to keep doing the same thing and expecting different results. And yet it's very, very easy to get trapped in that, particularly even, you know, if you've got a family to support. I mean, there'll be a lot of work.
Right.
Of people watching this that might be the main breadwinner for the family, and you know, they might have a mortgage, they might have kids to support, or, you know, husband, wife, whatever it might be. They might be looking after an elderly relative. There's lots of people that have people depending on them, but equally you're not really helping anyone if you're you know, not being true to yourself. You know, it's a horrible feeling for anyone who is a dependent. I mean, many children have been through this, who've seen parents that have struggled to put them through school or put them through college or something at the expense of their own happiness. And that's a huge burden to bear, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I didn't have kids or a mortgage or anything, so I was in a unique position to be able to do what I did when I did. But having said that, I've met people that have kids that have, are married, have mortgages, and still manage to make the transition, who are way older than me. I think,
Yeah, that's what I did. I had loads of responsibilities, but yeah.
yeah. So if you want it bad enough, you'll make it happen. You just need to make some sacrifices. I mean, how many people? I used to live with a guy who literally came home at 4 o'clock and watched TV from about 4 o'clock till 10 or 11, and then watched TV all weekend too, both days until he went out at night. So he had like a full-time job or more than watching TV. And if anybody, I mean, I'm not saying anybody's in that position, watching these videos, but I would say that we all have areas in our life where we can look at and go, do I really need to do that? And can I use that time more wisely? We all have that. So, and especially with what's going on now, a lot of people watching these videos, I would say, going out on a limb, they probably spend a lot of time watching videos, like this, or, to see what's going on in the world. And there's nothing wrong with that. But, is that really serving you? Are those videos really serving you? I think is a good question to ask yourself. Is anything that you do really serving you? Because we can always keep doing these things that may not serve us, right?
Balance is so key, and you hit on a key thing when you said, when you had that conversation, I think you said at the beginning, end of 2018 or something, with your friend who said, why aren't you doing music, and called you out a bit on your excuses.
Yeah.
And it seemed to me, tell me if I'm right or wrong, that when you started introducing something you're passionate about into your life, and you didn't have to go and get a job in music to do that. You could use your spare time to do something you're passionate about, which then raised your vibration, that then brought better opportunities to you. So I think sometimes people expect all their happiness or joy or fulfillment to come from their job or their relationship or whatever, and no one aspect of your life is meant to provide everything for you, do you think?
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. I think, having said that though, if you find that thing that you're passionate about, then it is going to provide uh, a really big portion of your happiness, isn't it? It
Yeah,
is. But there are other things too. You can't necessarily be super happy and be really unhealthy. Like
exactly.
you can't feel successful if you really hate your job. No matter how much money you have. You know what I mean? So there's it 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 is a kind of a bit of a balancing act.
I think you've got to look at all aspects of your life and sort of put your job into a perspective. In one respect, we spend a huge amount of our life, most people, at their work. So, it's so
Mm.
important that you honor yourself. You can't have self-love and really be demonstrating self-love and be going to a job that you hate. I've got so many friends of my
Yeah,
age
good point.
where either both partners or one of the partners are in a job that they hate, but they're just sitting it out for their pension. And I mean, everyone's different, and this isn't a judgment. I just can't understand that mentality. I couldn't do that. I'd be in a loony bin, but for them,
Yeah,
there's obviously some reason why that's important. I mean, I have no desire. Retirement isn't something I strive for at all. I want to be happy in my life now,
yeah,
and I'm not going to
yeah,
sit down and put my future on that. I don't want to think, oh, well, when I retire, I'll be happy. Just like holidays, I can love holidays or traveling, but I want to be happy in my day-to-day life here. That just should add an extra dimension, not be the means of my existence. Because so many people live for their 2-week holiday each year, or they did before lockdown. But so
mm,
looking back now, if you had someone that was listening to this, of whatever age they were, that are sitting there and thinking, look, I'm being honest with myself, I'm really unhappy in what I'm doing, it's really dragging me down energetically. What are some of the key things you'd recommend for them to kickstart that process of making a change?
yeah. Good question. Before I go there, I'll just tell you something about you said about retirement. Two things. Most people have that dream of retiring and sitting on an island and just drinking pina coladas or whatever, and that's not really, that you do that for a month and you'd be bored shitless, you know, like it's not really what you really want out of life, really, in my opinion. I don't think many people would experience that and go, yeah, let's do this for the next 30 years or, 20 years
Exactly.
or whatever. Uh, and the other thing is about retirement. And I know somebody who just retired and they just said to me, it's not really what it's cracked up to be, you know? And I'm like, well, there's a good reason for that. It's because you're not really doing anything, not anything, but there are many things you could do, like, but you're not doing the things that you came here for, you know what I mean? Like, so yeah. So to get back to your question, I really do think that the best way is what I said before, is just you can do this whilst you're working. You don't need to quit your job, and even if you've got a family or something, no one's saying you have to quit your job to then pursue something else. You could work on something on the side
Yeah.
until that makes you enough money so you can make a smooth transition. Don't do what I did and just quit your job and move to another city and then start a business, because that's a stupid idea, and I wouldn't do it again. But yeah, to anybody listening, I would say think of the things that you know that you like to do and just at least spend half an hour doing those things. Or don't do it all at once, maybe if you're short on time, but try doing that thing. Give yourself enough time, like half an hour a day or something, to do one thing that you really enjoy. And if you can see yourself doing that as a career, then pursue that, until you find that thing. When you find it, see, I kind of, even though I knew I wanted to do music the whole time, the whole reason for starting a business was so I could do music, but it didn't work out that way in the start. And part of the reason for that was my fault, because I didn't actually, if I had started doing music when I moved back from London, at least getting the ball rolling, I would have been doing music for 7 years now instead of 3, and so double the time. Um, get very clear on what you want, because the problem is that most people don't know what they want. And I know I said earlier that people deep down do know what they want, but most people don't really know what they want. If you ask someone what do they want out of life, they'll most when I was working in sales, I spoke to a lot of people, obviously, and I asked them their goals, and they always said the same thing. I don't think anybody said anything different. And the two biggest goals that these men had: I want a house and I want a car or something, and I want to go on holiday. And I'm like, are you sure that's what you want? Because everybody's saying the same thing. I'm sure that not everybody wants that, like, but it can't be, can it? It can't be that everybody wants a house and a car. Like, why? Like, it's okay to want those things, but is that really what you want? Like,
I think that's
so
so true. And I think so many of us don't allow ourselves to go there. If you ask any class of 5-year-olds, and they might want to be a bus driver or an ice cream lady or a thing, they're not all sitting there saying they want to be top class executives. They might want to be a footballer, might be this. And how many, as you say, does this get suppressed and you get told you can't do it, do a proper job? I mean, I get it a lot with my daughter now, who is a footballer, or soccer, as you call
yeah,
it.
soccer, yeah.
But and the amount of times, I would say 99% of people, when she says, what do you want to do? And she said, oh, I'm going to be a football player. No, don't be silly. You can't actually do that for a job. Very few people make it. I've got a niece that wants to be an actress and is an actress. And everyone's telling you all the reasons why you can't do it. So you've got to be really driven to sort of push through that and not conform to what people expect of you. But it's so fascinating, isn't it? I do think things are changing now. I do think things are changing. I think there's so much that people are realizing isn't true that hopefully people now are going to be saying, well, I don't need someone else to tell me. I don't need a job title. I'm going to go and create my own, whatever that might be. And as you say, if you can't do it straight away, you can do a step towards it today. You can do something to start to learn a new skill or free up some time so you can just be doing. I mean, a lot of successful people I know who've changed careers have done exactly what you've just said, David. They've had a day job that's enabled them the money to learn the new skill and set up the other thing on the side, and then you gradually switch them over. So there's so many different ways that you can do it that fits. You know, some people are all in, some people want a bit of a safer route. Do what's right for you.
Mm. And I think that, there was, as you know, being online, the internet is really, it's a whole different world to the
Yeah.
real world in many ways. But what I mean by that is that before I started this, online kind of journey thing, I had no idea of the online world, really, what was out there. So you don't know what you don't know. Like there are so many independent musicians making living online with their music, and I had no idea that was even a thing.
Yeah.
I was like, came to the realization or acceptance, should I say, of like, I'm never going to be a musician ever now. Like I was just like, this is not going to happen in this lifetime. But that's stupid. And I also think that, it's funny that you talk about your daughter, and because I think that obviously if the education system was set up differently, anybody could be guided to be successful in that thing. You know
Mm.
what I mean? Like, because not everybody wants to be a soccer player, not everybody wants to be an artist or whatever. But if you have the right number of, the right and obviously talent's a thing too. Like not everybody can be the next Ronaldo, right? But it doesn't mean that you can't make money with that thing, on a different level, right?
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
like I really do hope that the education system does change for the better in that respect, and rather than having this cookie cutter approach to education, you just that figure out like what the child's gifts and natural talents are, I suppose, and then if they want to, because it's up to them at the end of the day, if they want to, then they can hone those skills. And by the time they leave school, imagine how good they're going to be at that
Oh,
thing. Like
amazing.
it would be obscene. Like it's crazy. You get someone really good, like someone who, like, for instance, you go to Harvard Business School. Those people don't really run businesses. You
Mm.
know, the people that you learn from. If school actually had people that did that thing for a living, then by the time you leave school, you're going to be in a really good position to make money from that thing.
Exactly, exactly. And you have such a rounded thing. And I think that has to start from the parents because, as a parent myself, it just constantly on a daily basis, sort of looking at, am I falling into the trap of just conforming with my children, or am I saying, no, they don't have to be that? And, so many children need to go to different schools because they're all completely individual, even within the same family. Oh,
Mm.
well, I just think it's fascinating. I really hope anyone's watching. One of the things David and I have both shown is it's, particularly at my age, it's never too late to do what you love and make changes in your life. It really, really isn't. And that perseverance to keep trying different things like you've demonstrated, David, I think is really, really important because, as you say, if you don't know, if you can't sit there and say, right, this is what I really want to do, then try different things out and feel what
Mm.
resonates with you, and you'll start to get clearer and clearer with every step along the way, won't you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's like, yeah, it's very true. Even if you don't end up doing that thing, you
Mm,
may meet someone or may find out something else that you really enjoy. Because I didn't ever plan on doing what I'm doing now for money.
yeah.
But I'm glad I did. And the part of the reason why I did is because I still have a desire to build a business at some point, and I realized that my skill set was severely lacking in that area. So the skill that I'm learning now is a really good skill for building a business. So, if I ever wanted to do it, then that was the reason for that. I had another point, but I can't remember it now. But oh, the other, yeah, it's about the age thing. So I was like 35, before I decided, okay, now I'm gonna go and pursue music. And at 35, that's kind of old in that, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of old to be making that decision as far as society is concerned.
Mm.
But really it's not. Like it's really
Exactly.
not that old. It's really not that old. But we just have this this programming telling us, oh well, you're over 30 now, you can't do that. You're over 40 now, you can't possibly do that, or even over 50 or whatever. But you can. There was like there are these two English guys, white guys, who are really big on YouTube, and they're rappers. And like they're 60 or 70 years old or something. Like, and it's like you could do anything, with the internet. Like if that's not proof, I don't know what is, Like,
Exactly. I think, we've got to have good people around us that can call us out on our excuses and support us along the way, because I think that's really important, isn't it? I mean, that banking guy that actually chucked you out and had that conversation with you probably did you such a massive favor at that stage.
oh yeah, but getting kicked out of my house and losing that job were the best two things that happened, even though it just threw a massive spanner in the works. But yeah, and look,
Sometimes the universe forces you to make that change, doesn't it?
yes, yeah, it's a big kick in the ass. The universe, I knew that, I knew that I was not going to be in either of those places very long. I just overstayed my welcome, and that's what happened. But
Yeah.
I just wanted to add that the self-doubt thing, which is something that I struggled with for a long time. Obviously, wanting to pursue a music career at 35 and not having done much music in the last 10 years and just thinking, okay, crap, like what am I going to, I have to at least get good at one instrument, you know what I mean? At least get it good at singing and probably other things. Like there's so much on my plate. But if you love something that much, you're going to make time, you'll do it. You're not going to, we said this last time as well. You're not, you're not going to, you'll find the time, Okay, I don't watch any movies anymore. You know what I mean? Like I don't, I haven't really watched a movie, barely any. I could probably count the number of movies I've watched in the last 5 years on two hands. You know what I mean? Because
Yeah, me too. I'm hopeless. I haven't got a clue on those, but I don't regret it at all because I'm, doing the things I love instead. And then other people love sitting there watching movies. So, each to their own. It's really, really important. So are you going to play us out with one of your songs, David?
Yeah.
Because I just love your music, and obviously we'll have the links below where everyone can get David's music. But what are you enjoying before you actually start playing it? What are you enjoying most about this creative journey you're on now? Because you're really evolving week on week, aren't you, with what you're doing with the music?
Yeah, I think it's really tapping into, because you don't know what you're capable of, I think that's one of the biggest lessons I've learned, and there are so many other ones, but one of the biggest things is that you don't know what you're capable of. You don't know what your potential is until you even attempt to achieve it, right? Supposedly the human potential is unlimited. I wouldn't doubt it, but in are we going to all reach our potential? Maybe, maybe not, but at least you're going to get closer to it if you actually try, and I
Yes.
think that was the biggest thing. Like another obstacle to overcome was songwriting and things like that. I'm like, oh, I have to get good at songwriting too. There's so many things, but the good thing is that there are shortcuts to these kinds of things. If you want to get good at something, like a lot of my songs, I model song structures from other songs that are already out there. I don't need to think about it. Like you just, success leaves clues. So there's always things that you can pull. It's called, you can steal. There's a great quote. Yeah, steal like an artist. Yeah, there's a great quote that is, amateurs copy but professionals steal.
Yeah, absolutely. That nothing in life is unique, is it? It's like you build on it. You build on things you hear, and you add your bits and your twist to it. Yeah.
Yeah, precisely. I mean, this song that I'm about to play, I didn't take the whole song structure from the other song, even though that would have been fine because I'm using different everything. Everything else is different. But I got the main song structure from this other song that I really enjoy, and the piano part of that song inspired this one, which is fine, but it's also completely different. So,
Yeah.
as long as you're not plagiarizing, then there's nothing wrong with stealing an idea, if you take it in a completely different direction.
One of the most flattering things you can do. So is there anything else before we finish that you want us to know, the audience to know, or that you want us to know about this song?
Yeah, this song is about, well, it's pretty self-explanatory from the lyrics, but it's really just about the the zombies, really. It's kind of about the zombies, and not just the zombies, but also the evolution of the planet, really, and the inhabitants of the planet. Yeah, so I hope you enjoy it.
Enjoy, and we'll have the link about how you can support David's music below. Thank you so much, David. We will be back again soon. Let's play out with your song.
Thanks, Catherine.
I see them walking fast asleep. I hear them mumble in their diction. They know that they can't take the heat. Too scared to look at their reflection. Will we ever change? Or are we going in the same direction? We all want the same. Do you see the light? Not a single black sheep lining up for their death injection. Unlike the average NPC, just thinking that it's for their own protection. Will we ever change? Or are we going in the same direction? We all want the same. Do you see the light? All my brothers and my sisters, are you there? All my brothers and my sisters, take my hand. 100 million spiritual beings, devoid of any soul connection. We will always take the next step in our revolution. We will always change. Now we see the light. We will always take the next step in our revolution. We will always change. Now we see the light.
Love it. Thank you so much, David. And we will be back again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much, Catherine.
Take care, everyone. Thanks for watching.